Ready? Go. 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 Oi, 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 oi. More energy, more energy, more power. Oi. Bloody hell, mate. Oi, 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 oi. Oi, oi, oi. Oi, mind up. Oi, oi, yeah. More energy, more power. Oi, oi, that was mad. More passion. Let me see that footwork. Give it to them. More passion, more energy, more passion, more energy. Oi.
I don't know, whatever it is, it's not right on the teleprompter. I don't know what that is. I've never seen that.
No, there it is. We are going to do Sting, yeah.
Okay, but
Okay.
yeah, I can't read it. There's no words on it.
Okay. Ready? Sure.
There's no words there. To play us out. What does that mean? To play us out.
Sting is going to do, it's a video, Sting video.
What is...
For credits.
I don't know what that means, to play us out. What does that mean? To end the show?
Yeah.
All right, go.
In 5, 4, 3.
That's tomorrow, and that is it.
Okay. In 5, 4, 3.
That's tomorrow, and that is it for us today. And we will leave you with a... I can't do it.
Okay.
We'll do it live.
Okay. No.
We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it, and we'll do it live.
Right.
Fucking thing sucks.
In 5, 4, 3.
That's tomorrow, and that is it for us today. I'm Bill O'Reilly. Thanks again for watching. We'll leave you with Sting and a cut off his new album. Take it away.
So you're telling me there's a chance? Yeah!
Do it! Just do it! Don't let your dreams be dreams. Yesterday, you said tomorrow. So just do it! Make your dreams come true! Just do it!
We obviously didn't communicate clearly. We had to discuss your surrender, not mine.
Tú eres tan romántico molestando con una diva. Me pregunta si te quiero. Yo te digo que no estoy lista y no quiero comenzar. No hay nada que pensar. Yo te dejaré atrás. Mientras gano más y más. No estás en mi nivel y tú no eres obligación. No estás motivada y tú aburres mi corazón. Eres un idiota sin inteligencia y razón. Entonces déjame tranquila mientras escriba tu canción. Tú eres tan romántico molestando con una diva. Me preguntas si te quiero. Yo te digo que no estoy lista y no quiero comenzar. No hay nada que pensar. Yo te dejaré atrás. Mientras gano más y más. No estás en mi nivel y tú no eres obligación. No estás motivado. Corazón. Eres un idiota sin inteligencia y razón. Entonces déjame tranquila mientras escriba tu canción. Estoy aquí a disfrutar. Estoy aquí pero quiero gozar. Si quieres a mí pero vamos a bailar. Cintura a cintura, papi, tra, tra, tra. Bailando, gozando y me gusta tomar. Pero no quiero pendejos que no quieren respetar. Déjame pendejo, papi, ya no más. Déjame pendejo, papi, ya no más. Estoy aquí a disfrutar. Estoy aquí pero quiero gozar. Si quieres a mí pero vamos a bailar. Cintura a cintura, papi, tra, tra, tra. Bailando, gozando y me gusta tomar. Pero no quiero pendejos que no quieren respetar. Déjame pendejo, papi, ya no más. Déjame pendejo, papi, ya no más.
What is up, everybody? It is your boy Luis Martinez, aka at Big Chief Burrito, live with you on a Thursday. Haven't done Thursday in a while. MiGenteShow live and direct from San Diego, California, the Burrito Lounge. Currently the Timberland Lounge because I got myself some Timberlands for my birthday. It is my birthday tomorrow. Personal news. We are celebrating by staying alive and going to work. You know, that's what we do. Everything's cool over here in San Diego and Louisville. Sophia is still on a break because she is out making a movie this month and next probably. So we are lining up guest co-host and for some of the episodes, as well as some special guests, people that have been on the show before, because the show must go on, and MiGenteShow continues to roll until Sophia comes back. It'll be me and some different types of guests, co-guest host, as well as invited guests to be part of the show. And, you know, we talk about film, we talk about movies, TV shows, art a lot here on the show. We don't talk a lot about technology, finances, startups, entrepreneurship, which is, I think, as much as I like to focus and am focused on embracing and creating spaces for Latino artists, as much as we love doing spotlights, our Latino spotlight each week, each episode, to sort of highlight a Latino artist, I think it's also important that we branch out and that we expand the types of people that we interview on the show, that we spotlight on the show, because it's about mi gente, my people. And there's a lot of our people out there that are in the tech world, that are in the finance, that are in the gaming world, in the political world, activism, So as much as we interview a lot of filmmakers, a lot of artists, actors, actresses, etc., I think it's also important to delve into this. So to help us talk about that, navigate the world of startups, of technology, of entrepreneurship, friend of the show and overall good guy, Mr. David Favela.
Hey, ¿qué onda? What's going on tonight?
How's it going, my brother?
Good, good. Looking forward to the show and chopping it up with you.
Absolutely, man. So let's jump into it. It's been a tumultuous few months for you, as well as for, in more like a local niche San Diego way into like the Barrio Logan area as well. We had kind of talked about this a while back when you were first on the show, about kind of the battle of, it becoming a hot property area, sort of gentrification affecting it as it affects a lot of different neighborhoods, and trying to stuff. But then we obviously get the bad news that the different closings of different things here and there. So what's the update from our end on how things are changing in that neighborhood in San Diego? And is this something that you anticipated coming that took you by surprise, or they just couldn't fight against any longer?
No, I think it's really a longer story than just the last 6 months. Honestly, I think the end started on, what was that? March 15th, 2020, when COVID was declared and all the shutdowns happened. I don't know if you remember, but at that time, there was still a lot of galleries on the street. We had the Chicano Art Gallery, we had La Bodega. They were really the lifeblood of those, just bringing the crowds and making it just a super artistic, dynamic, unique community. And within 6 months, La Bodega closed in December of 2020. When we lost the galleries, that was the beginning. And, Ernie Becerra and I and Milo and the other operators in the community said, we just lost this vital part of our community that was so important to us. Can we step up our game and keep the momentum going? And I think we all tried. And I would say that 2021 was actually a pretty good year for all of us. But, the dynamic just started to change. It wasn't the same. The same kind of cultural events weren't happening. We didn't have the dynamic, the energy at the same level. So when last year came about, Ernie closed down. We closed down. Even Barrio Dog closed down, which was a surprise. It was really kind of like the final step of something that got unleashed in COVID and back in 2020. You know, I can't speak to Ernie or the guys who own Barrio Dog, but a lot of us were doing very well before COVID. I mean, we had very little debt, and just to survive the dips and the closures and everything, we all had to take these low interest loans, these EIDL loans, and not just those, but others, you know, and it just started to pile up. And the bounce back wasn't strong enough to really get us in a good position. So, you know, no, it wasn't overnight. I think this last year, I really gave it my all. If you remember ChicanoCon, like I really organized it. We sold out. I mean, it was just, but I noticed that all the events, even Day of the Dead, ChicanoCon, Chicano Park Day, they were all off by 10 to 15% compared to the year prior. So there was already something happening. And despite what we were doing, we weren't able to change it.
And do you think that also in terms of just obviously there's the business
and, you know,
aspect,
the rents
right?
are just part of that story. You know, unfortunately, we have landlords that, you know, I'm not going to call them out specifically, but I think in all cases, the rents went up.
Not only for businesses, but also
Go
for
ahead.
people that live in the neighborhood that might have also started to like leave the neighborhood, right?
Yeah, I know quite a few regulars that used to come to Border X no longer live in Barrio Logan. Yeah, it's unfortunate. We're just super close to downtown, and that's always going to be the curse of Barrio Logan, that the closer you are to this growing hub of urban housing and entertainment and everything else, it's just going to impact the community. And I guess the vision we had was, could we grow with it in order to preserve what Barrio Logan is, the history, the people, the traditions, all of those kinds of things. And I'm not so sure if we can anymore.
Well, I mean, it's indicative of obviously bigger things that are happening culturally, nationally, locally, and stuff like that. But we do appreciate the fact that you fought for the long. I know it was a great space, and you know it brings us to the next phase, which is obviously a chance to sort of refocus your energy on something that I already knew that you were very passionate about, but that maybe was maybe trying to keep the location alive was maybe drawing some of your energy, I would assume, at least from being able to do this more full time. But then it allows you to get more into this that we have spoken about, which is entrepreneurship, startups specifically aimed towards the Latinos and minorities. So tell us, at what point did you pivot, and were you able to really sort of put all your energy behind this, where maybe before it might have been a little spread out?
Yeah, that was part of it too, was closing one chapter. And I mean, we're still going to do some things with Border X at Mujeres. You know, we have a space there. We're not going to call it Border X. It'll be called something like El X or The Spot or something like that. And we want to keep that OG, local artists, local culture, just keep it real authentic, to how we started and how that whole cultural movement started. And then we'll see where Border X goes. But you're right. It's the closing of one chapter and the opening of another. 3 years ago, I started a tech incubator at UC San Diego. And my charter was trying to bring more diversity to the high tech startup community. And so, I was looking for startups that were in biotech, life sciences, or having some kind of technology involved. And I think we did a good job. I got about 130 companies going through the program over the 3 years. So I'm happy about that. But in the process, I realized something, that I still had very few Latinos. And in January, I went to a conference there at SDSU. It was called Tech SoCal. And there were probably 500 people there. And these were startups, tech startups, people who sold their company, investing in companies. And there were 2 or 3 billionaires there who had created companies and sold them or still own them. And out of the 500, maybe a dozen were Latino. That was me, the wait staff, the cleaning staff, and maybe 2 or 3 other Latinos. I mean, think about that. We're 40% of the population in San Diego. We don't exist in the tech startup space. And there were only 2 African-American gentlemen out of the 500 as well. I went to talk to them as well. And I think I realized something was seriously broken. You know, and it's kind of funny because Latinos, we're the hardest working ethnic group out there, right? Whether it's labor or whether it's starting up our scrappiest startups, right? Whether it's a taqueria or a landscaping, like we'll hustle. We'll never sit on our hands waiting for someone to hand out money to us. But what we don't do well is we don't start companies at scale, right? And I'm talking about 5 million, 10 million, 100 million, 250 million. We don't do that. And I think part of it has to do with the fact that we send a lot of our community to college because there's a lot of great programs now. I don't know if you know this, but at no time in American history have so many Latinos have had advanced degrees. They have master's degrees, they've got PhDs, but where are they? They're working. They're working in academia, they're working in industry. And I think the issue, and I've interviewed quite a few of them, is one, they were never told that the startup life was even an option. 2, they didn't even know where to start. Like, okay, I'm an entrepreneur. Now what? You know, what's step 1, step 2, step 3? And number 3, it just wasn't part of the culture. You know, they didn't know anybody. They didn't know uncles, aunts, cousins that had started their company and sold it for 100 million. You know, there's like this world out there that I go amongst those folks, but we're not there. And that's why I started up the Latino Startup. And I started to take all the learnings that I've had over the last 3 years and put them into practice. Like, how can we help the most educated, experienced, and talented Latinos who are working for someone else to consider starting their own company? And so that's really what the Latino Startup Challenge is about. Is I'm trying to give the tools, the training, the group support to get people to at least think about it. And I know that being an entrepreneur isn't for everybody, and that's okay, you know. But I feel like I have to train 100 or 1,000 people to get, I don't know, 50 or 100 really great startups. It's a numbers game. We have to figure out, how do we get more people at least trained and considering it so that they can at least get their toe wet, right? Dip their toe into the entrepreneurial world to kind of see if it is for them. How do they know it's not? They've never even experienced it or knew that it was an option. So that's what I'm doing.
Something that, because I was, not that it was related to this interview, but I was rewatching. We were watching The Social Network at the shop the other day, and it's about a startup, little startup called Facebook Meta. Yeah. And there was a line there when the Winklevosses are talking to like the dean of Harvard, and he's like, Harvard students always think it's better to create a job than to get a job, right? Yeah. And I think for Latinos, it's the opposite. We're always taught, embedded probably, that we need to get a job, not create a job. So I think that's a huge shift in focus and in, mindset, right? How do you get a group of people that are generationally predisposed to being hard workers, go-getters, the original pull yourself by your bootstrap crowd, to think bigger?
Yeah. And that's the tarea that I got to do. And I have good news. I am beginning to sign up different people to the program, and I'm so happy to see where they're coming from. So, not that I'm limiting it to STEM or technical or, technology startups, but I have people who are like PhDs doing research. But in fact, if I could share his post with you, how he communicated to me is like, I'm working full time. I'm learning a ton about some, biotech field that he's working in. And I have some ideas that I want to eventually commercialize. He is exactly the person that I want to bring into this program. This is my website here. So I am asking people who are interested to go to the Latino Startup. There's a blog there, and just sign up for our launch. And in it, really all it does is gets you into our newsletter, and I'll be sending out information if you're interested in joining this first founding cohort of really cool people who are really thinking big, right? These are, and I'm not knocking, by the way, the smaller, community-based businesses. My dad had one, but I think to honor our ancestors, I'm sure they want us to think bigger. I'm sure that, my dad is very proud to see that, we can grow $100 million businesses. ¿Por qué no? And I think it's the kind of thing that can be trained. I think it's the kind of thing that may not be for everybody, but I think at least 1 out of 10 are going to be the ones that receive the training and really get excited and really go after it.
Right. So you guys can go to TheLatinoStartUp.com. I just signed up for the newsletter. It took me 2 seconds.
Yep.
Go ahead and sign up, keep up with it. Not only yourself, but, we have a lot of artists, filmmakers, people like that. Share it with your STEM friends, because they're the ones that need to know about this. Share them with your, autistic friends, your nerdy friends, your geeky friends. Even if you're more of the traditional, like you're a mechanic, I'm a tile worker, I'm a worker. You got a cousin, you got a friend, you got a brother, you got a sister, you got somebody in your family. And I think a lot of this also goes to embracing those parts of our personalities, and Latinos that have those STEM personalities as well. I remember growing up and getting shit because I would talk about wanting to make movies. Yeah. And because it wasn't a very Latino thing to do, to dream about going to Hollywood and being a director and a filmmaker and being involved with cinema. So I'm assuming now there might be people that, I also follow a lot of things like Latinos in gaming, Latinos in this, Latinos in STEM. So yeah, there's definitely space for more Latinos, Latinas, Latins that are thinking big, thinking more globally, thinking about, like I said earlier, creating a job rather than getting a job.
Yeah, exactly. And, I also want to say that while I am focusing on STEM and technology plays because they tend to scale, media scales as well, right? I mean, if you make a movie and it's seen by billions of people out there, that's a scalable business. And what I'm going to be training people on is something called Lean Startup, which is a methodology of trying to get laser focused on what you're trying to accomplish, right? Instead of throwing a pin or a dart into a board, you really start thinking like, even if I was going to make movies, right? And it's a real interesting discussion, like how much of it is just art and inspiration and what the artist wants to do versus what the market wants to see too, right? So there's some kind of utility functionality that has to be brought together. Otherwise, art, and this could be a deep discussion on art, but I think that's the beauty. If you can balance the two, where you're creating something that is unique to yourself, is part of your vision, but you're also able to do it in a way where that connects with a massive customer base. ¿Por qué no? I mean, I think that's really
I think what you run into there,
that we have, and I think following the process that I train people on, that's the kind of thing we do, is we get people focused laser-like on like, okay, what am I trying to do here? Who is the customer I'm trying to connect with? Is it, young children? Is it teens? Is it adults? And I think that feeds into the artistic process. And hopefully I think it results in something that balances those two priorities, because I think movies that get made but don't get seen are great art, because sometimes they can be appreciated by a few or appreciated after decades, but I think there's something to be said about making art that connects.
No, I think the only place that I would give you a little bit of kickback on that some people might is that I think a lot of artists are gonna not necessarily want to think that their goal as artists is to create art for consumption rather than creating art for art's sake. So I think that when you turn it into a commodity, it can rub some purists like the wrong way, you know. But I believe that there's kind of like a happy medium that I think would be for both of them, which would be, you know, you can think of your art as your art, but if your goal is to be, there's no shame in wanting to become a working an artist that makes money at art, you know.
There's no shame in that, and I think that's okay. And you know, it's true that you have to be who you are because art is something that comes from your soul, from, you know, places that are deep inside us. But at the same time, I think if there's a dialogue between, okay, how far out there do I want to be? How avant-garde do I want to pursue versus how much what am I trying to give people from a feeling perspective? I don't know. I mean, right now I'm listening to a lot of comedians, and I don't know if you know Josh Johnson, but he's an African-American kid. He's got this narrative monologue kind of approach to comedy that has this theme, but he wanders and then comes back to it and nails it. Like he's like Mark Twain, brilliant. Like that guy's gonna, I think, do a lot of great things. Same thing with Dave Chappelle. You know, I think that's an art. I think that he's connecting with people in a way that, you know, is pushing the envelope, but bringing everyone along with him.
Got it. And speaking of movies that you can watch for money, did
Yes.
you know, David Favela, that you can watch my film Blacklisted on Amazon Prime right now? It's a film that I made here in San Diego almost 10 years ago in a production company recently, like 9 years ago. It was my first major feature film. We had 132 actors from San Diego as part of the project. We made them all SAG eligible. We made the film for less than $50,000 here in San Diego. It's one of the first indie feature films made in San Diego during that time. There's been a few made since then. But it is finally available to rent or buy on Amazon Prime. Just look up Blacklisted. You can rent it for $2.99 or you can buy it for $9.99. And half that money goes to me so that I can make more movies. So check out Blacklisted on Amazon Prime today. Sorry.
No, I love it.
Shameless plug.
You know, but I'd like to explore it a little bit. Like, what's the inspiration? What's the idea of the movie itself? What are you trying to express artistically?
So, I think as a filmmaker, and if we're getting into like the what makes artists make art, I've walked around with movie scenes in my head since I was like 10 years old. I'd be walking down the beach, or I'd be riding in a bus to school, or sitting in school in class, and I would be thinking of movie scenes, and I would just be like a guy walking into the ocean, or somebody, you know, doing some, you know, like I imagine actions, movie scenes, situations. And ever since I can remember, I've thought in movie scenes like that. The way I come up with ideas is I come up with a scene, an action, something, and then I build around it. And a lot of the times I don't recognize the themes of it until I'm done with it. I wrote my second feature, Slapworthy. I wrote this scene and I gave it to my writing partner, and he's like, "Why did you cut the scene short? You're talking about this.
Yeah.
You're making a commentary on this." And then I was like, "Oh, okay. I didn't even know that." So I think that for every artist, it's going to be different. For me, specifically, if we're getting to Blacklisted, it was a concept that my friend C.G. Thomas had. And he gave it to me, and he's like, it's this and this and this. And I did it more as an exercise because we filmed this movie. We had the concept overall, and we basically did a broad outline of this story, this action drama revenge movie. It was like Death Wish meets like every boxer movie ever.
Wow.
So it's like a Charles Bronson revenge movie mixed with like martial arts and boxing. And I had this outline of the entire story, but we were shooting an independent film, so we had to. So I would rewrite each scene as we had a location available. So it was like, all right, we got the tattoo shop and the dojo. So you got to write the two scenes that take place in the dojo, even though one takes place here, one takes place here in the story. And then we have to write the tattoo scene. Yeah. So each individual scene was written like the week leading up to us shooting that scene. And then it was like, okay, we have this location available, so we got to do all these scenes, you know. So I rewrote everything on the go. So the thing I say about this movie is sometimes people say that it's greater than the sum of its parts.
Yeah. This
film is the opposite. As a whole, it's a little bit muddy because as an entire movie, it's like, all right, there's some issues. It was an indie movie I made for $50,000, but each individual scene is very good, and it's like a high quality scene, high production value. So it's kind of the opposite. The individual parts of it are really, really good. Does it fit overall like as a huge movie? It's you know, it's not like, but each individual scene will be like, okay, this is a good independent cinema, you know.
That's great. Well, I love the cover shot. I think the cinematography, the effects, lighting, mood are so essential. I think when filmmakers lose that and just shoot with standard light and standard, unless they're doing it on purpose, you know, to evoke some other sense of space. But I love the
artistic choice.
Exactly. As an artistic choice, it's fine. But to me, the movies that transport me are the ones that really focus on the cinematography, right? The lighting, the angles, the shots, all those things. So
as a filmmaker, I'm not a great camera person, so I always try to work with people. I mean, filmmaking, I believe, is a collaborative art. So I'm a great director, editor, writer, but I'm not the best camera person. I know what I like, but I'm not like a technical person. So I always make sure that I surround myself with really good camera people, really good sound people. Let them do what they do, really good effects people. When I have somebody that's collaborating with me, I make it a point not to give them too many notes because I really want them to buy in and to really feel that, you know, that we're collaborating, which is what I truly want. So for Blacklisted in particular, Oscar Velasquez was the first time I worked with him. He's a local cinematographer in San Diego, Mexican. Like he's fucking, I love him to death. And I've worked with him probably like a half a dozen to 10 times we've made movies together. So he's like my go-to. He's an incredibly brilliant cinematographer. So the lighting, the camera movement in this is, like I said, the individual scenes are very, very well made. So I'm really, it's gotten some great response so far. I'm really looking forward to people letting me know what they think about it. So
I'm going to try to watch it tonight.
Yeah. I'm gonna shoot you the link. I'll shoot you the link so you can take it out.
Yeah. Thank you. Blacklisted, and is it on Prime or Netflix?
It's on Amazon Prime. Yeah. Oh yeah, you can just search for it on Amazon Prime. You just look for Blacklisted. It'll pop right up as recently added. But so, you know, we're talking into we're delving into like the art world. We're delving into this thing. What do you other than entrepreneurship, the businesses and stuff, what is your creative outlet, David? Do you paint? Do you journal? Do you sketch? Do you do karaoke that we don't know about? What how do you get, you know, when you're not being like the business guy, the entrepreneur guy, the startup guy, you know, the brewery guy, what is your art?
I gotta be honest. You know how you thought since you were young, you saw things from scenery or shots or scenes? I've always interpreted the world through ideas and especially business ideas. I'm always curious to see why something is working and something is not, you know, tearing apart the business model. So, I mean, right now I probably have 10 different like entrepreneurial ideas that I don't have time, energy, or budget to pursue outside of my own other endeavors, you know? There was a time when I was a youth where I had to just create this notebook where I do one-page business plans. Like, okay, this is going to be this. And all right, to get it out of my head and just put it in this notebook and park it. And the thing I like about it is it's not all just numbers. There's a lot of human psychology of like, why would this work? How does it work with humans? I've got this piñata project that you should see. I created this mold, and I love like painting it. I guess I love that. I see business like almost as an artistic thing, as crazy as that sounds, because a good business is something that's pulled out of thin air, just like an expression of art, and is assembled in such a way where it's cool, it's original, it's saying something. I mean, for me, Border X was articulating something that I held deeply about my own personal philosophy. I mean, a lot of people were like, oh, is the name Border X or Border Cross? And I say yes to both. And the reason is I've always felt that, especially for us in San Diego, we're unique. We're creatures from two different cultures. We cross the border on a frequent basis. We create things that are from both sides of the border. And that creative, I mean, in some sense, you and I are unique too. I mean, if you go to Northern California, it's not the same vibe. It's not the same energy. We're constantly creating our identities, our culture, our food. California burrito doesn't really exist north of Los Angeles and barely in Los Angeles. It's here in San Diego, rolled tacos with guacamole. There's just so many things. And that's what Border X for me stood for, was that it's a beautiful thing being able to pick from two cultures and create ourselves with whatever we want. And I was always fascinated by some of our customers. They could be punk rock, Morrissey, but Vicente Fernandez lovers too. Like they got one foot in culture and the other foot in a different culture. And for me, 11 years of working with Border X was that. It was like exploring ChicanoCon, trying to celebrate that fusion of cultures.
So it's not necessarily art, but it's a passion. So it's where that thing that drives you is. It's a passion of plans, of business, of creation. It's totally an art in of itself. So I understand where you're coming from. But,
and I mean, I mountain bike and I love to do certain things. Don't get me wrong.
That's a hobby. That's a hobby. What I was going to tell you is that is precisely the reason that my production company is called 2 a.m. Burrito, because it's I'm from New York. My writing partner's from Massachusetts, but San Diego is my adoptive hometown. I've been here for 25 years. So and the 2 a.m. burrito is a uniquely San Diego thing. It's you're out, you're partying, you're having a meeting, you're at a quinceañera, you're at a bar, you're at Border X. You went to see a band, you went, whatever. You're coming back from the mountains 2 hours away. You're coming back from TJ. It's late. You're getting a burrito at 2 a.m. In New York, you're getting a slice of pizza or going to a bodega. In LA, you might be getting TJ. You're getting tacos. So, but the 2 a.m. burrito was a uniquely San Diego thing, and to me, it was a time and a place. It was a moment. It's a feeling, of being home and having something that's comforting for you. So I completely understand the uniqueness of San Diego culture as I have embraced it. As a Colombian Uruguayan from New York, that's honorary Mexican to all my friends. So I feel a great kinship to the city. So let's say somebody comes to you and they're like, all right, I'm not what you would consider a tech guy. I'm not what you would consider learned, but I've always had ideas in my head. I've had ideas in my head, and then like a couple of years later, I see that somebody actually did that thing, and I'm like, I thought about that like 3 or 4 years ago. I'm a person like that, and I want to give it a shot. I'm like, why the fuck not? Why not me? What if I take one of these crazy ideas that I have, and somebody helps me to think, what do I need to bring to the table for step one? Like before you create a deck or whatever you need to do, or do research or do what's step one, like walking into the door?
That's an excellent question. So step one is not coming to me or to the program with your idea fully baked. Step one is actually stepping away from that idea. Might be a great idea. I'm not saying it isn't, but go back deeper. And step one is really thinking about that a business essentially solves a problem for someone, and they pay you money to solve the problem for them. The people who started that taco shop and stayed open till 2 a.m, they're solving a problem. Hey, there are people who are out and about hungry and they want to have a burrito at 2 a.m. But joking aside, that's where you really need to start, is having a real clear vision of what's the problem, what are the people who have it look like, and is the problem big enough to really do a business around, right? Like you and I might get an itch in our back, and we're like, oh, I can't reach it. And hey, I'm going to get a stick with a little hand on it, and that's going to be my business. That's not a big enough problem. You know, there's some problems that shouldn't be solved, shouldn't even be addressed. And the reason is you can't create a business around it. You know who's really famous for this? Have you ever seen the Japanese memes? Because they're big problem solvers. They have, umbrella hats. They have
the costumes where they dress as like a solution to a very simple problem.
Exactly. It's a whole cultural thing for the Japanese. They invent the hell out of everything. Right. But not everything needs to be invented. That's not a problem that's relevant. So I would ask anybody who comes to me, what is the problem you're solving and who are you solving it for? And it sounds strange, but when you go back to the core, it changes the way you think about your solution. You may still have a great idea, but go to the core, because at the end of the day, these are the people that are going to spend money to buy your product. So you need to get laser focused on who these potential customers are.
Yeah, absolutely. So is that what is meant by being a disruptor? Because in some essence, you could be like, well, fucking taxis work just fucking fine. You know, I worked for a cab company in New York, which was like the original Uber, which was a phone cab. You called, all right, and then you would get a radio cab over and they'd come pick you up. But somebody said, what if you could just press a button and do that? And we could exploit then we could we could exploit the taxi driver. Then why I could probably make $1 billion off of that. When you think of disruptors, do you think of people that just take something that already exists, like pick something that already exists, make it an app? Or do you believe like true disruption is just looking at a problem, like you said, and trying to find a way to solve it?
I'll give you a real tangible disruption comes from the fact that your idea and your innovation is so big that it blows your competition out of the water.
Like Napster. What if we all just shared music?
Yeah, exactly. You can't compete with that. It was blowing the whole music industry apart, and the music industry had to do something about it. But you don't even have to go too far. I'll give you a concrete example. So I don't know if you ever went to a circus when you were a kid. Went to parking lot and there was a tent and they had elephants and lions, and that used to be a big deal. That was like a big entertainment industry. And for a long time, they all competed with each other. They basically had the same show, but maybe this guy had 3 white Bengal tigers. This guy had 4 elephants. Like they were competing.
The flying Walendas.
Yeah, they were competing with, exactly. Just a whole variety of different acts, and their cost structure kept getting bigger and bigger the more extravagant they got, and they were all losing money. None of the traditional circuses were making money. Circus Vargas, Ringling Brothers, all of these different traditional circuses. And then there was this little circus troupe out of Quebec that said, what is the problem we're essentially solving? And they said, people come to a circus for what? Entertainment. Can we entertain people without animals? Yeah. Absolutely. Let's not have any animals in our circus. What about the acts? Should they be just separate performances? Boring, after a while they get a little boring, or should they be more of a story because people want to be entertained, and storytelling is the oldest form of entertainment? Yeah, no animals. Let's do storytelling. And hey, by the way, because we don't need a tent anymore and we don't have animals, instead of being closed for half the year, because do you know these circuses had to close and go to Florida like during the winter? That was like their cycle. And then they would go out and do their tours. They said, let's go indoors. Let's use theaters as venues instead of just circus tents. And so now they started operating throughout the year instead of just 6 or 9 months out of the year. So they innovated the hell out of the circus industry. And right now they're about a $2 billion company. And when was the last time you ever thought about going to a circus, a traditional circus? But would you go to a Cirque du Soleil show in Vegas? Maybe. So sometimes taking a traditional industry and the way they were doing it, but radically transforming it, but essentially being the same to what the customer wanted. The customer wanted entertainment. They wanted an evening of entertainment in a comfortable, good storytelling way, and Cirque du Soleil did that. And that story, you can just go over and over again. I'll give you one last quick one, which I think everyone can connect with. You heard of this little company called IKEA?
Yes.
Yeah. Changed the game, right? So they started in Denmark. And when the gentleman who started it, one of his job was furniture sales. But the problem that he saw was that in Denmark, there were no big department stores. They were all little craft shops. Like you'd go to a village and say, hey, make me a dining set. And a guy would be like, okay, give me a deposit. 6 weeks later, come back and pick it up. So there was no like department store solution. Everything was already built, so you couldn't package it. So you had to ship it to the house from wherever you had it made. So now you had all these additional costs. And all these things were pain points. And so this guy goes, you know what? What if I make it more contemporary? What if I ask the customer to assemble it themselves? What if I flat pack it so when I ship it from place to place, it's, I can fill a container really effectively and really drive down a super low cost to make decent quality furniture available to more people. And he remade the entire industry. So when you talk about someone blowing apart, an industry, I think you can take any existing one, whether you're Napster, IKEA, or Cirque du Soleil, and you reinvent it. But how do you reinvent it? Going back to looking at what did the customer want originally? What is really the pain point that they have? And for IKEA, people wanted a low-cost, well-designed, solution to furnishing their home. And that's
meatballs.
what happened.
And meatballs.
So I actually teach a class to junior high and high school kids called Innovation from Tech to Tacos.
Okay.
And the idea behind it is innovation. Like, I'll give you one last example. When I started Border X, I had a choice. I could be like every other brewery in San Diego, or I could rethink what a brewery could be. And so I developed Border X, being a Latino craft brewery that did something unique. Our beers were different. Our music was different. Our entertainment was different. Like everything we did was different. I mean, we showed up on the best breweries to visit in San Diego, not because we were like the best, but because we were different, and people appreciated that. And I think that's one of the reasons why we were so successful for so many years. So yeah, I think that's really the gist of it is you can go, and the reason I call the lecture From Tech to Tacos, you can even innovate the taco game, right? I mean, whoever invented the California burrito, that was an innovation. There's not a lot of places that know how to make a California burrito. There's all kinds of things you can do.
Gotta be a stoner, right? I mean, like, well, it's got to be a stoned guy, and he went to the taco shop, and he's like, "Oh, they have fries. They have carne asada burritos. What if you put the carne asada? What if you put the fries in there?" And the guy's like, "Sure, you fucking stoner." And boom.
Well, it's like hot Cheetos. I don't know if that janitor invented it or not. What'd they do? They said, you know what? Mexicans love snack foods, but regular Cheetos ain't hot enough. They want it que pique. And And so they customize it, and now it's one of their hottest selling products, and it outsells just about everything else that they have.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think that there's a certain percentage of the population that walks around thinking about movies. There's a certain percentage of population that thinks about businesses and ideas and things like that. There's people that think numbers. There's people that think romance. There are people that looked at the world and they're like, huh, there's probably a better way to do that. Or, huh, I wonder, or even not even there's a better way to do that, but I wonder why they do it that way.
Yeah.
That seems kind of cumbersome. We've all been in situations where we're like, this seems like an extra step that I don't have to take. You know, you can innovate, you know, civil services, you can even innovate food, you can innovate film, you can innovate, you know, all kinds of stuff, education. So it's really interesting it's really interesting as a startup, but I feel that there's this extra layer where you have to almost teach people how to think so that they can think in the way of a startup.
Correct. And that's what I do. That's what I train. There's a methodology called lean startup methodology, and it really forces you to follow a process and really learn. And it's very simple. There's 5 steps. What's the problem? Who has it? How big is the market opportunity? And then there's a step in there called customer discovery, which is, and this happens to me all the time. I get people who are like, I got the brilliant idea. Okay. Who else thinks this is a brilliant idea? Nobody except for you. Have you gone and talked to people who would like to have your product or have the problem that you're solving for them? And then you build a prototype. And then that prototype, you have people try it. And you keep refining the prototype. And this is all low-cost stuff. You know, last summer I did startup sessions at in Barrio Logan for all kinds of people. And, you know, I had one person, for example, him and his family brought his older daughters, his wife, and himself. He's like, we want to start a bar that's female-friendly. I said, that's a great idea. But they're trying to think about, well, where do I start? They said, should I sign a lease? Should I find a spot? Should I just go for it? And I was like, hell no. There's so many steps you can take to prototype that idea before you actually make and sign the lease. And I told them, look, come up with a logo. Come up with a virtual drinking club for women. You know, Las Chingonas Drinking Club. See if other people like it. You know, bring him to bars and have these activities. Create some merch. Experiment with it. See how people are feeling, whether they really like it and you like it. And after you do that for a bit, yeah, maybe consider signing a lease. But that's not the first step you should be taking. I mean, a lot of people don't know. You're familiar with Mujeres Brew House. That didn't just happen like that. That started with an insight. We said, you know what? There are a lot of women who come to Border X. What are we doing for them? Like, how are we making them feel good about craft beer? How do we make them feel more welcome? And Carmen, my wife, said, you know what? Let's do Mujeres Brew Club. Let's give them a course for 6 weeks where they come one day a week and they learn about the history of beer, the styles, all those kinds of things. And let's see what happens. And then we started. We thought maybe 20 women would sign up, but we hit 20 in the first 30 minutes, and then it was 40, and then it was 50, and then we're like 60. We're like, holy shit, we got 60 women coming to the first session. And they came, and they loved it. We were sold to capacity. We were doing our second club cohort, but that's when COVID came about. And it was only later, in the middle of COVID, in fact, around July, that we decided to do Mujeres Brew House. But I told my wife, the reason I did it is because we had so much success with Mujeres Brew Club. So do you see what I mean? I de-risked the signing of the lease from Mujeres because I knew if Mujeres had its own club, its own space, it was going to blow up. And we were right. And but my point with that is I prototyped it as a club first. So I really recommend to people to really figure out how to break down their business idea into smaller, tangible steps. And I think Latinos were really good at that, right? If you're a chef and you're thinking about starting your own restaurant, what do? You do a pop-up, right? You go somewhere, you offer your food, you see what people think about it, you fine-tune it, you build out your menu. Those are the kinds of things that I teach of how, and the funny thing, Luis, is it's called lean startup because the idea is you're not supposed to spend a lot of money and time on your business idea. You should spend 6 months, no more than a year, like testing this thing and seeing if it's got legs. If people aren't reacting to your product or your idea, then you should stop. You know, there's a saying, the vice president I used to work for at Hewlett Packard, he goes, David, if you're going to fail, fail fast. And suena como grosero almost, right? It's like, what do you mean? I don't want to fail. Why would I fail fast? But what he was trying to tell us, and I really took this to heart, was don't keep messing around with an idea or business idea if there's no traction. There's no point in wasting your precious time, energy, and resources beating a dead horse. And one of the saddest things I've ever seen is in my program, I have a few people that have been working on the same business idea for like 5 years. And that's not good. You know, they've maxed out credit cards, they've spent a lot of money, and they're still not getting progress. And I think that's because sometimes we get this idea from media or movies that all we need to do is échale, tú si puedes, eventually you'll get traction, you'll succeed. But I think you have to be objective about your business and say, no, I did all the experiments, I tried, and it didn't take off. And once that happens, then I think you've got to pull back and say, either I tweak it, I pivot, or ya estuvo. But I really recommend people not to keep beating a dead horse if they feel like they've been doing good experiments and testing out their concept, but not getting the customer reaction they expected.
So, I mean, in essence, we need to think bigger, but more methodically.
Yes.
In smaller steps, and not think of it as, and just kind of figure something out. If really test it out and see if it's something that might work, and if not, move on to the next thing.
Yeah, and that's okay. I've had a lot of my most successful startups in my program are the ones who followed the process, and when they discovered that their original idea wasn't being well received, but in the process they discovered a variation of it, tweaked it, and now they're having great success. But the only people who can tell you if you have a great idea or not is a customer. Not me, not you, not the business owner themselves. The only people's opinions that matter is a customer. And that's what we try to do, is to put the business in these tests to create evidence that there's traction there, that people want this, that you should continue investing money.
Now, David, I did hear a rumor that there might be a keg or two left of the Border X Jamaica beer.
Yeah.
And it is my birthday this weekend, and I'm having some people over on Sunday. So if there was like a mystery keg or a couple of 6-packs of that beer lying around somewhere, where would somebody go to find that? Or, I mean, are the rumors true? Is there something out there for Lou? What's going on?
You know that the cold room at Mujeres is pretty packed. I think maybe there might be one stuck underneath 1 or 2 kegs. We'll have to double check.
Yeah, double check. Let me know if there's any way I could grab some of that for this weekend. I would love to sip of it. Once again, guys, David, thank you very much for coming on today, man. I do think it's an important conversation to have with people about thinking bigger, but thinking methodically. Learning how to think that way, and realizing that there's a lot of things that culturally make it so that this is something that not necessarily that you couldn't do or you can't do, but we didn't realize we could. That's one of the things that where I try to give back, or where I try to be the person that I wish somebody, a younger version of myself, had for them, is with my work with the film festival and trying to, bring up, comedic filmmakers, specifically filmmakers who ordinarily wouldn't get into specific types of film festivals. Getting that first opportunity, because I remember when I first got my first film into a film festival, what that meant and validated my career as a filmmaker to be. I think my space is trying to help that out. So I think it's great what you're doing, and I want to see you do better. And I think it's an important place for us to be there. Learning how to think that way, and it's a great resource that you're creating.
Yeah, and if I could just say in parting, I think that I don't think people realize the unique time in history we're living. I know Trump's in office and all that stuff, and it's very distracting. But if you look at California, not only are we nearly 40% of the population, we're like 60% of the student population that's coming up K through 12. And I think the real interesting thing is they're going to be looking for culture that connects, right? We are the tastemakers now, right? This isn't like it's not happening. I mean, Latino music is taking over Southern California. It'll be having a bigger impact in movies. We need more Latino filmmakers, musicians, and business owners, because I think it's our time to shine. The next 20 to 30 years, you're going to be seeing a lot of really exciting changes in the culture. Yeah. You're already seeing it,
Yeah, I had a brain fart, but but you reminded me of what I was trying to get to, which is that I love to be in a position where, like, when I meet kids, or when people would see us filming a movie, and it's these like Latino kids, maybe they're skateboarding, maybe they're tagging, or maybe they're whatever, but we're on location, and they're like, "What's going on?" And I was like, "Yeah, we're filming a movie." And he's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm the director. I'm in charge." Because then they'd be like, "Oh shit, like you're the boss," and they're like, "Yeah, like you guys want to watch me direct the fucking movie and stuff like that." Or when I work with Jose Yenke, and his organization, and we went and we shot a scene with some kids to like show them, look, like if you think about if you're one of the few people that think about making movies, then you should make movies. If you're one of the people that think about this, then you should go this. It's not about doing the thing. Sometimes it's about realizing that the thing is a possibility for you. So that's kind of like where I work. That's kind of like the next step for me, is I want to put myself in more positions where I can. That's why I was saying, maybe do like a panel, on independent filmmaking, on being a Latino podcaster, stuff like that is something where I'd love to be more involved, because I'd love to, each one teach one, try to help people understand that there's simple stuff where you can get positive. Like, we started MiGenteShow and we had 100,000 downloads the first year. Yeah. And so, and it was just two people that would just talk shit and was like, let's do a little niche podcast for Latinos, and it's by Latinos for everyone, and do a spotlight of a Latino creative or entrepreneur. And, here we are almost a year, over a year later, doing pretty good. So it is a possibility for everybody. And if you want to learn more and you want to sign up, then go to TheLatinoStartUp.com, join the mailing list. Launches in 2 days. This podcast will release tomorrow on my birthday. And so hopefully people will be able to check it out. I'll be letting people know about it. We can continue to promote it on the podcast as well. And as always, remember, you can watch Blacklisted on Amazon Prime for $2.99, out of which I get 75 cents, or you can buy it for $9.99, out of which I get $2. So any money that I get from this film is going to go towards making the next movie. So if you want to support independent cinema, want to support me, as I want to make another movie, I've been part of the film festival so long, and I've been podcasting and tattooing, and it's time to make another film. So that's kind of what's happening for me, Mr. Favela.
Well, we got open doors. All of us are pioneers in our own way, in our own fields, and there will be so many more following behind us.
Yeah. All right. Well, guys, thank you guys for joining us. David, hang around for a second. It'll do a little quick goodbye thing, and then I'll do a postmortem with me, and then I'll let you go. But thank you guys for hanging out with us, as always. For Mr. Dave Favela here, Big Chief Burrito. We'll be back next time. Everybody take it easy out there.
Vamos, papá, hay que irnos. Me estoy aguantando desde que pusieron el domo.
Puedes esperar. Muchas personas trabajaron en esta película y solo quieren que te aprendas sus nombres de memoria.
Y yo quiero asegurarme de que ningún animal resultó lesionado durante la filmación de esta película.
¡Listo! ¡Uy, palomitas en el suelo! Wow.
Espera, parece que Maggie tiene algo que decir. Pero es su primera palabra.